Antarctica was one of those trips I took that completely transformed my life and my career. I went down there with the National Science Foundation as an artist fellow in the Antarctic Artists and Writers Program, and that was back in 2006. I was there 2006 and 7 for a small fellowship. And I had been aware about the environmental issues before. In fact, I wrote my proposal to create installations about climate in Antarctica. But it wasn't until I was there, meeting with glaciologists, spending time with them in the mess hall, eating with them, brushing my teeth at the communal bathroom that we were at every morning. Just spending time in Antarctica, spending time at the lab, talking to scientists informally, that I understood just how dire things were. And it transformed my perspective. I think to be an environmentalist, to be aware of the environment, is just to be aware of the other. And by the other, I mean those not yet born. I mean those who are in other longitudes and especially latitudes, people who you never meet, but have a shared place in space on this planet. And I think the reason I was so open to the conversations with the scientists is because in my life, there was this empathetic way of being as a son of Cuban refugees who had to welcome others who had lived the same sort of experiences years after my parents did, to welcome them, to understand them, to provide shelter and care for others, is something that is in my grain. It's how I have lived my entire life, to be part of a community and to understand that there's a responsibility for the other. So it's not a big step to understand that when the entire planet is impacted by the human impact, by pollution, and that those who suffer first and suffer most are those who are most vulnerable, who are poorer, who are at society's margins, that sense of empathy and love and concern gets wrapped up. And that's what happened to me in Antarctica, because I realized that the ice that I was standing on threatened to melt and impact lives, ecosystems that provide ecosystem services, that provide shelter and protein and habitat for humans, that every place where land touches water was imperiled. And that allowed me to pivot from a decade and a half of social justice, racial justice, AIDS advocacy, health care, substance abuse prevention, community-based art to climate art. Because I understood that the biggest justice issue, biggest social justice issue of our time was the collapse of ecosystems, the heating, warming of our planet, the loss of habitats, and the world that we have seen now self-implode and destroy itself in the past few decades. And it is that moment in Antarctica where I decided to completely pivot and transform my work into one that was really focused on addressing climate head-on.